Listen, I got $100,000 right here, but with inflation, might as well take $10,000 and get rid of it right now, because guess what? It's gonna feel 10% less powerful. It's because we're in a recession, but Biden and the administration, they're doing everything they can to change the definition so that they're like, no, we're going from rapid growth to steady growth. Does it look like we're facing steady growth? Well, today we're gonna talk about a recession in a way that most people aren't, because there's more that meets the eye to what's really going on. Let me show you.
One shot, now the future is yours. Go! I'm turning dreams into reality. Yeah, it's one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
So today we're gonna talk about what no one is actually saying in terms of this recession, because I got news for you. They won't actually come out and say that we're in a recession for over a year when you actually understand how they arrive at that definition. Which means that until that news is actually reported, there's gonna be a lot of uncertainty. And of course, like I said, the risk for you is that money that you've spent your entire lifetime saving is at risk. It's at risk with inflation actually going down, but more, are you gonna be able to keep your job, or what sectors are gonna be hurt? How are we all going to be affected? Today, I wanna start by talking about this gentleman. So this is our president, it's President Biden, and this is what he said 13 months ago about our economy and whether or not we should actually be concerned. A year has passed, did it come true?
And by the way, talking inflation, the overwhelming consensus is gonna pop up a little bit and then go back down. No one's talking about this great deal. So, again, if it turns out that what I've done so far, what we've done so far, is a mistake, it's gonna show.
So time has passed, and the question is, are we actually in a recession? Well, there's a lot of people arguing that recession is already here. Take a look. In many countries, the official definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. As of July 1st, the US economy officially fits this definition. However, in the US, a recession isn't official until an 8-person committee in the National Bureau of Economic Research declares one, which, by the way, usually takes about a year. So where does that leave you and I in the meantime? So there are 3 major steps, factors, if you will, that really play into the recession that we're feeling right now. This is something that not a lot of people are talking about. When we went through the pandemic, we knew that we had some supply chain issues, but is that having an impact on our economy today? Take a look. If there's one overarching factor playing into the inflation, it's certainly what's been happening in terms of global supply chain, which is a continued consequence of the pandemic. Pandemic might be over, but it's not really over. It's like a divorce. You get divorced, but then they just don't go away.
Hey everyone, it's just a divorce.
So what this ultimately leads into is the second step, where we're experiencing what's called a bullwhip economy. It's like a small flicker of the wrist if you've ever whipped a whip.
Ah, sweet, it's a whip.
And what it does is it has huge, even bigger lasting effects as that whip carries on. While supply chain issues affect consumer prices, fluctuating demand has adverse effects on businesses as well. The bullwhip effect is a phenomenon describing how small fluctuations in demand at the retail level can cause progressively larger fluctuations in demand at the wholesale, distributor, manufacturer, and raw material supply levels. In fact, if you look at this at the customer level, it's just like, I went to the store and they didn't have what I wanted. They said it might not be in for a couple of weeks. I guess I'll come back then. What that does is that creates demand that ultimately someone has to fulfill on. Well, all of a sudden the retailer starts feeling it. Like, you remember when the shelves were empty? I was trying to buy my 6-year-old daughter, some Birkenstocks for Christmas. And we went in, and every time we went in, there was nothing there. What that does is that puts pressure on the distributor, but ultimately, somewhere down at the very end, there's a manufacturer that's like, I gotta gather rubber and leather and raw material, and I gotta make shoes. And why is this so much bigger at the end of the bullwhip? Check this out. So check this out. We've got customers that want stuff. And let's just say for this example that we have customers that want 12 units of something. It could be 12 units of Birkenstock. So what ends up happening is they forecast a demand from customers of 15 units because you don't want to run out. So they want to have a little bit more. But by the time that the retailers are actually ordering enough stock plus a safety amount, they now believe that they should be ordering 20 units. Well, what happens by the time it gets to the wholesaler is they're ordering 30 units because they need to get a bulk enough discount where the wholesaler actually has some margin to make some money. And then they go to the manufacturer and the manufacturer is like, well, I need to order 60 units of raw material because I need to bring down my costs. I have to do this thing in bulk at a higher level. So what ends up being just a small little whip here from what a customer wants, we only actually want 12 pairs of shoes. But they're trying to build 60 of them. And what it's doing is it's creating delays in that entire supply chain that's happening somewhere for the most part overseas. How does that ripple effect into a problem in our economy? Well, we're living it right now each and every day. It's a very basic economic principle, supply and demand. You know, technically in real estate, because the Fed's been increasing rates, people are wondering, are the prices going to continue softening? Are they actually going to go down? I mean, for the last 3 years, we've seen a 50% increase nationwide in the prices of homes. Did they actually go up too much? Well, take a look at supply and demand. We are literally still missing millions of homes, a historic number that still hasn't been rectified. And yet, the Fed has lost control over the economy. So there's one last lever they can pull, which is increasing rates. And you know what? They said up front this year, we're going to increase them quarter over quarter over quarter. They've done just that. And you know what that's producing? That's creating panic. That's creating a lot of uncertainty from people that want to be in the game of real estate. People thought they wanted houses. Now they're saying, I can't do it at that interest rate because the house I wanted 2.5 years ago was $300,000. Today it's worth $500,000 or $600,000. And guess what? I could have been okay with that price, but not at a 5% rate when before the money was literally halved. It was like at 2.7%. And so what this does is this actually allows the government to slow the economy. It slows down some of that demand. The supply, however, hasn't quite gone away, and it's going to jam things up. Because remember, we've never even fully recovered since 2008, which is why month over month over month, over the course of a decade, we saw that demand continued to increase bigger and bigger and bigger. We never really quite caught up. It's happening in the real estate game, and now we're starting to see things shift in the pricing. But at a retail level, this can happen at a way bigger level that leads potentially to a really big crash. Muskrat candle. So here's the theory. This is the third and final step that leads to this potential inevitable crash that basically says supply chain issues are increasing inflation. So not only does your dollar go less far, but businesses are overextending themselves for a demand that may not actually exist. For the short term, this creates high production, which is GDP looking really good, but it will ultimately cause the economy to crash harder because what happens to the value of real estate when no one wants it? It goes down. That's what increased rates are doing. What happens to a bunch of inventory that we've ordered that people actually can't afford, don't want to buy? Well, what it does is it actually creates this recession that is no longer looming. I think it's here. But politically, it may take a little bit before they fess up to it. Every single recession looks different, and this is what this one looks like. We got a pandemic. We have volatile supply-demand issues that create supply chain issues that supports the issue with inflation. Obviously, what's happening in Ukraine is not helping. Obviously, the government printing all of that money, that's not helping. You add all those factors up, we now also on top of that have these rising interest rates, and boom, we are perfectly poised for recession. And the question is it gonna be a really long, dirty, nasty one? Or is this something that we're going to get over relatively quick, kind of like the pandemic? Well, this probably looks like a whole bunch of bad news because inflation is bad and recessions are bad. But in truth, I actually don't really feel that way. Understand that recessions are actually part of the life cycle of a healthy economy. It's something that's going to occur. We don't have the ability to always control the politics or the reasons why people do the things that we do or how many trillions of dollars we're printing or are we ever going to balance the deficit. But at the end of the day, you need to understand, and I learned this from Napoleon Hill in one of his books. He said, with every major disadvantage, there's a seed for an equal or greater opportunity. And I'm going to tell you right now, in a recession, it's not all doom and gloom. If you're slow to pivot, if you're slow to adapt, then the recession is probably going to have some level of impact on you, ranging from a little bit bad to maybe horrible. But if you actually look at some of the different angles that are out there, you're going to find that there's silver lining. There's plenty of opportunities right now. For example, take 2008, the Great Recession. Everyone said the sky was falling in the game of real estate, and we saw brand new homes in Phoenix, for example, that were selling for $300,000-400,000 grand, go back to the bank. Someone had to be buying them back from the auction for $100,000, $120,000. One of those individuals was me. I beat Blackstone there 18 months ahead of time, transacted over 2,000 properties, and guess what happened within 5 years? Those homes reevaluated, they caught up to the cost to build, and when I sold them, there was over $100 million left over to me and my partners. So where are the opportunities in this economy? Well, first of all, don't let fear get to your heart. Don't think that this is the worst of times or the end of times. The reality is you just have to get a fresh perspective on really what's out there. Opportunity is out there when everyone is running this way. That's what Warren Buffett said. That's called blood in the streets. He said he looks for it because he's going to move counter-cyclically in the opposite direction. While the oncoming recession may be inevitable, you can prepare for it. Working hard to save extra money now and purchasing hard assets like real estate can protect you against rising inflation. And when recessions hit, you're going to be in a position to take advantage. But real estate is not the only thing. For example, you're going to find that there are some industries that get really hit hard in a recession while we give birth to brand new ones. Think for a moment about the pandemic. Guess what happened to all of the restaurants when people literally couldn't go in and order their favorite dishes? DoorDash became a thing, and all of a sudden these $2 million buildings, these really nice restaurants, people started DoorDashing their food, and someone had the great idea. You know, a macaroni grill costs $2 million to build, but if people want the food and they now prefer to have it at home instead of the restaurant, we don't really need a $2 million kitchen. In fact, we could rent some warehouse space and cook up the same fantastic recipes, DoorDash it, and increase our profits exponentially. Hence, we now have an industry called the ghost kitchen industry, and by the year 2030, it is projected to be $1 trillion industry. That's new opportunity. Do you remember 2008? Guess what came out of that? Airbnb, it had its heyday. Uber became a thing. People learned to think differently, and companies didn't just innovate. There was disruption where they started doing things entirely different. This recession will be no less. You will likely get hurt if you just say, hang on tight, ride it out. Inflation is going to hurt me. I'm going to lose some money, but eventually years from now, we'll recover dollar for dollar. I think that's the dumb choice. The other one is, wait a second, let's pivot. Let's look at this as an opportunity instead of a bad thing. And we may need to reallocate some assets that were sitting over here to over there. I'm doing this in one of my companies right now. There was a project a year ago I was so bullish on, I was so excited about. And right now I'm actually looking at the lay of the land, and I'm going to recover some of its resources, and I'm deploying them in a couple of things that have shifted that are literally producing 25 times more money. This is what successful people do. Successful people see this as an opportunity, and I'm inviting you to do the same. Well, if you're going to successfully navigate this recession, here's my advice. You got to have a financial philosophy. Do you have one? Is it Dave Ramsey? Is it just save, 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 and bury your head in the ground a little bit like an ostrich?
Stupid!
Or is it, well, no, I need to invest, but I need to invest differently? There's so much noise out there about what that strategy should be. And you know what? I've got one. Chances are, if you're a subscriber, there's parts of my financial philosophy that might appeal to you. It might be what I do in business. It might be what I do in real estate. It might be some of the people that I hang out with. It might be the fact that I love creating new streams of income, asymmetric growth opportunities, and investments. And I've captured all of that in my latest book. It's called Have It All, The Roadmap to Becoming a Self-Made Millionaire. And I believe that of all the asset classes, there are 5 specific things that you need to invest in that will bring you tremendous amounts of financial balance. This book today for you is free, as long as I don't have supply chain issues with China, and I still have copies of it. As in, like, click the link below, and if the link is live and you can get it, it's yours. Now, I do ask that you cover the shipping and handling on it, but the book itself, check this out. It's full color. I've poured my entire life and team into it. This book really is the solution. And so I want to make it a gift from me to you because I believe that knowledge applied is power. And right now, with such financially uncertain times, read this book, weigh it out, decide what works for you, keep it, develop that financial strategy, put it in place, take action. Execution is everything on this stuff. And make sure that when the recession is over, that financially, you're in a better spot than you are right now. Man, is the video already almost over? I've got so much more to say on this topic, and I just can't fit it all in, which is why I've made you another video, which is on 5 business pivots that will help protect you against inflation. Listen, if you want to awaken that financial genius and take your finances to another level, you got to get yourself educated, and this video is designed to do just that.